Hello and welcome once again to Interludes with Chris Mackenzie. And we have in the studio today producer, director, but mostly known as actor Bud Tingwell. Welcome to Golden Days Radio.
Thanks very much indeed, Christine.
This
Good
is
to be here.
Very exciting, very interesting. There's a lot we want to hear about your life, which has been a life that has been very full.
Yeah, I've had a lucky run, as they say. Yeah.
And you started up in... You were born up in New South Wales?
Yes, I was born in Sydney at Coogee, surfing beach, about half an hour from the centre of town, we used to say, by tram in those days. Don't have trams in Sydney, somebody's going to say, no, but you did then. And no, it was great. Surfing beach, in fact, my nickname Bud, I only found out relatively recently. Certainly it was after my mother died, which was some years ago now, but her surviving brother said, when we were having the traditional family argument, how did you get the nickname Bud? God, it sounds like some Yank. But and all the theories were trotted out, and Uncle Viv said, no, you got it on the front at Coogee before you were born, when all my surf club mates used to say to Mum, whose name was Enid, "G'day Enid, what's budding there?" Meaning me, of course. And I was then known as the Bud. How's the Bud? Now, this was before I was born. And then apparently they kept the Bud as how's the Bud today, meaning me as a baby. And then they gradually dropped the "the." And then a cousin was born a couple of years later, and she was christened by an aunt, Blossom. So there was Bud and Blossom. She now lives in Adelaide. And I've got to try and control myself. I still want to say, "G'day, Bloss, how are you?" But her husband christened her Diana, because Bloss. I've heard of a Bloss.
Blossom's a wonderful name.
It is rather.
Think of Blossom Dearie.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Exactly. So you got into acting fairly early, though.
I did, because my name begins with T, my surname. We were alphabetically divided up at Randwick High School, Randwick Intermediate High School it was then, and I found myself sitting next to Owen Weingott, whose name began with W. Sadly, Owen died a couple of weeks ago now, a great, great friend of mine, and we're godparents to each other's kids and things. But Owen and I shared a tremendous interest in this new thing called radio drama. This was 1935, when I was, 12,
Yep.
and Owen was 13. And he did something about it. We got permission from Ernie Silk, our English master, to do pretend radio plays in the classroom. We used to go behind a cupboard and just use voice. We didn't have any equipment, no microphones or anything like that. Owen did have a book on sound effects, sort of lead shot on a tin tray for rain and coconut shells for horses, of course. And Ernie would allow us to do it. Well, Owen got a bit more ambitious and started doing adaptations of whatever book we were studying. Mm-hmm. And Ernie Silk, I think we had him all through high school. He was the English master, and a very good one, because I got a very good pass in the exams, at the intermediate exam, I'm sure thanks to Ernie. But it did start me off. Owen and I went on to different schools. I went to Sydney Grammar School. I wanted to go to Sydney High School, where Owen and all my mates were going for the last 2 years at high school. And but Dad had won a prize in the lottery, so he sent me and my brothers to Sydney Grammar School. Now, Sydney Grammar School had a very good dramatic society. Sydney High had an even better one, because they could work with real girls from Sydney Girls High School. Sydney Grammar School, no, but the first part Owen gave me when he did an adaptation of a book was Lucy Manette in A Tale of Two Cities in a borrowed dress of Mum. So when I got to Sydney Grammar School and I realised I've got to have to get fellas to play the girls' parts, I kept well away from all women's roles, of course, after that. And, of course, it was, but it turned out to be a great experience, because we did some amazing plays, not brilliant classics or anything, but wonderful comedies, like The Crimson Coconut, in which I got a rave review in the Sydney Grammar School magazine, which my brother showed me recently, which was amazing. Best notice I've ever had.
Oh, rubbish.
Oh, yes, it was. If I could get that from the Age, I'd be thrilled. Yeah, brilliant, and all that stuff. That's what you want to hear when you're an old actor.
When did you actually start on and do the radio?
Well, Owen talked me into we lived near each other. He was in Randwick and I was just not far away down in Coogee. And he got me to take part in some of the radio competitions that were on the radio in those days for amateur actors. There was one famous one called Do You Want to Be an Actor, compared by a man called Rod Gainford. And Owen said, we'll enter that, so we entered it. I didn't win anything, but Owen won his heat, and he went on to do finals every month. And the girl who won the final that night was Joy Nichols, who went on to have a great career in England, you see, and in, wherever. And but I got a consolation prize of 10 bob sent up from the audience for the young man in the light sports coat. And I looked around, I was the only one with a light sports coat, so I went up and I got this consolation prize. So I thought, that's going to be my career, getting the consolation prize. If they can't get him, they'll try him for the role. But then Owen talked me into taking part in a competition for amateur dramatic societies. And I said, but we are not in one. He said, we will form one. So we became the Osiris Players, because wine got in its original European meaning. Owen said meant god of wine. And then he found out that Osiris in Egypt had something to do with wine, so we became the Osiris Players, as a result of which I was cast in one of the leads in a radio serial with the great Jack Davy, which was a schoolboy story, Billy Bunter of Greyfriars, very famous in its day. Yeah. Jack Davy played Billy Bunter, I played Bob Cherry, who was the leader of the Upper Fifth or something, and people like Howard Craven and Ronald Morse, really very distinguished actors. Obviously quite young in those days because it was pre-war, or the war was very new, World War II I mean. And I used to go across the park from Sydney Grammar School in College Street, across Hyde Park, into the T&G building and up to the roof, and where we had a radio studio, and I used to record my episodes after school hours. But that was a great experience. I learnt an awful lot, particularly words I'd not heard at home from the great Jack Davy, who had a rather colourful language, not on air, of course. Brilliant man, great. Yeah. And that was terrific. It was a great experience. At the end of that year, I got into 2CH as a cadet announcer, and then as soon as I turned 18, I applied for the Air Force and got in as a pilot and flew aeroplanes for quite a while, and then came back to my announcing job.
But you flew aeroplanes overseas?
Oh, yeah. Anywhere.
Anywhere?
Anywhere. I was RAAF, and they said, you go anywhere. So we went out anywhere. Interesting, though. I did a tour of ops in the Middle East, and I was instructing on very good aircraft called the Mosquito, and I'd flown the Spitfire on ops and all that. It was good. And somehow or other survived. And but because I was a flight lieutenant when I got back to Australia with wings and things, my mother said, you'd make a wonderful Smithy. They're making a film about Kingsford Smith, the great pilot, the great Australian aviator. And I said, but Ronnie Randall's playing that part. She said, well, go out and see them. So I went out to Cine Sound, where Owen and I used to hang around as kids and watch them making movies. And the bloke in the casting department said, have you come about a part? I said, yeah. He said, can you read lines? I said, yeah. He said, is that your own uniform? I said, yeah. He said, good, you're in, providing you bring your own uniform. So Bill Townsend, our CO up at Williamtown, where I was by then being a Mosquito instructor, gave me a day's leave, and I played this part at the beginning of Smithy. And the war was still on, and it started as a flashback with American aircraft landing in Australia during the war, and then if somebody said that was pioneered by Kingsford Smith across the Pacific. And then they told the story of Smithy. It was a very good film. And but my little scene is still in it. I was amazed to see not long ago. But that scene, when the war ended, got me a screen test for one film. But before we did that film, I was offered the lead in another film through a chance meeting with somebody. And so I had a sort of combined film and radio career almost immediately after the war, which was great.
Right. Well, I think we're going to take a little break and listen to some music. A gentleman whose voice you like a lot.
Oh, not only the voice, he was a fine actor, Frank Sinatra. And also, he shook my dad's hand once. We took Mum and Dad to one of his concerts at this Hehr, the big stadium concert. This one was in Sydney. And at the end of it, Dad put up his hand as Sinatra walked past, with millions of people trying to grab Sinatra. Dad put his hand up, Sinatra stopped. Dad said, congratulations, and Sinatra said, gee, thanks very much, sir. And it's like a recording I've got in my head. And he smiled at Dad, shook his hand, and walked on. And I thought it was one of the nicest things I've ever seen a big star do, because he could have just said, thank you, and kept going.
Yeah.
And then before that, I'd done a movie with Peter Lawford in Australia, in South Australia, and I realised there was a strong bond. You know, they call them the Rat Pack and everything, but they all had a tremendous respect for Sinatra. Fine actor too, and when he performed as a singer, he acted brilliantly. I mean, that song when he One for the Road, my golly, he lights a cigarette, drinks a drink. It was terrific. It was a wonderful performance.
Well, that's not what we're going to hear now.
Oh no, you're going to have a more romantic one, I hope.
Yes. Listen to this.
You are the promised kiss of springtime that makes the lonely winter seem long. You are the breathless hush of evening that trembles on the brink of a lovely song. You are the angel glow that lights a star, the dearest things that I know are what you are. Someday my happy arms will hold you, and someday I'll know that moment divine when all the things you are mine. The dearest things that I know are what you are. Someday my happy arms will hold you, and someday I'll know that moment divine when all the things you are mine.
Did that make you happy?
Well, you see, All the Things You Are became one of the songs my wife and I used to hold hands to. And when Sinatra did it, oh, wow. That I think by then, I hope we were married.
Now, you did radio serials, though, didn't you?
Oh, my word, yeah.
Tell us.
Well, I mean, I played Bob Cherry opposite Jack Davy and Billy Bunter of Greyfriars, and I think one of the first ones I got was, I certainly played the lead as Pip in Great Expectations for the Lux Radio Theatre.
Really?
Which was great because we used the movie script that John Mills had done just before as the radio script, and it was very well adapted by one of our good radio writers. So I've always had a strong feeling that there's a link between radio and film, which of course we used for The Castle, because we rehearsed The Castle like the Lux Radio Theatre in a big circle. We used to get round and we read it and read it and read it. Didn't try to learn it or anything, just read it and read it over about four-hour sessions. And it's one of the reasons why I believe The Castle was such a success. We all knew each other's performances so well, and we got deeper and deeper into those characters, so that by the time we started shooting, there was no preparation required. We just rehearsed and shot, and did it very, very fast.
Yeah.
Of course, we had to, otherwise they'd have run out of money. But it was a wonderful shoot.
So
And
after Lux,
but anyway, Lux, yeah. So then I did things. I was playing Lord McGurkinshaw or what's it in Tarzan, and then Rod went to Rod Taylor was playing Tarzan, and Wally Pym, the great Walter Pym, was directing, and he said, "You can take over from Rod because Rod's off to Hollywood," and which I sort of basically talked Rod into trying. He won a very good acting prize, which was 6 months study in England. And I said, why don't you take your ticket via Hollywood? Because I'd worked over there before. And I said, you'd worked with an American company and he'd done a movie with them. And so, all right, so I went over. On his way to London, but he didn't get past Hollywood. Anyhow, I said, Wal said, you can take over as Tarzan. I said, I can't, I'm playing Lord, what's his name? And he said, yeah, well, we'll write an episode that fixes that. So the archives have got an episode of Tarzan with me being Tarzan, doing the Rod Taylor version, me, Tarzan, you, Jane, in the phoniest voice you've ever heard, and me as Lord McGurkinshaw dying up a tree. Out of the put up there safely by Tarzan so the animals couldn't get to me while I died of whatever disease. And there is this duologue between me and myself, one on camera, one on mic and one off mic. And then Ray Barrett took over from me. And if you've read Ray Barrett's book, don't believe that bit because he thinks he took over from Rod Taylor and he didn't. And I said to Wally Pym, I said, why'd you pick me? He said, because your send-up of Rod was better than the other fella's send-up. We used to send Rod up as soon as he walked in the studio. Morning, Rod. You Tarzan. And all that. And whenever we got on air, we'd all do a bit of a send-up. Roger Clemson was the narrator. And he was the only one who could do the call, but we had the call on disc. Rod couldn't do it. None of us could do the call except Roger, and he was the narrator. At the drop of a hat, Roger used to do the call. I was the producer of This Is Your Life on Channel 7 one season. Roger used to love doing the Tarzan call at the posh party afterwards, which was lovely afterwards. Rather distinguished chap, introducing "This Is Your Life," and then, oh, I won't even try. But most people know the Tarzan.
It's not a sound you associate with Roger Clemson
Not
at
a
all.
lot, not a lot, no,
Not a lot.
no, but he was one of the good radio actors of the day and did a lot of narrations. I think beautiful, Roger.
Wonderful. And then.
Then, you name it, I played Ellery Queen for the Grace Gibson Company. I did played Gil Hart in Heart of the Territory with Peg Christensen, Margaret Christensen. I was assistant compere to Bob Dyer for many years, and on Cop the Lot and Can You Take It? What was it called? Pick a Box and all those shows on radio, of course. And oh gosh, I can't think of them all now. But they provided a reasonable income, and I tried not to get involved in long-run shows because I love doing movies. And if you were in a long-run show, they hated you if they had to get somebody else to take over the role. But I got a sudden call in 1952 to go to Hollywood to do The Desert Rats, and this was on a Wednesday night. And Grace Gibson, who was actually born in Texas, I was about to go on air as assistant compere to John Dunn in Strike It Rich at 7:45. We were national live, no recording, of course. And I was called to the phone at the back of the radio theatre. Bud, it's Grace here. Can you be in Hollywood on Saturday? I said, what's this? And she said, Fox wants you over there in a hurry for this film, The Desert Rats. Chips Rafferty had already gone over there for it a couple of weeks before. And she said, but they've lost your address and they've rung me because she was American and she knew some of the American production people. And so somehow or other I recorded 34 quarter-hour episodes of shows on Thursday and Friday and got on a plane on Saturday morning and arrived in Hollywood on the Sunday. Thursdays was bombed out of me. Well, no, we did. I don't think we were that jet-lagged in those days because it took longer.
That's right.
And we were diverted to Fresno, California, because we couldn't land in San Francisco because of the smog. And anyhow, suddenly I'm in the first shot in the movie out in the desert, and that was a blur, And they offered me a 7-year contract as I arrived, and I said, hang on, whoa, no. And so I just signed for the picture, and then went back. And Chips and I had plans for production plans. We'd done a couple of movies together by then, anyway. And so it was an amazing run. But, of course, when I got back, my agent, Nora Burnett, said, of course, they all hated you, you know. I was thinking everybody was saying, oh, isn't it nice for Bud to get a trip to Hollywood? No, they're saying this. They hated me because I had to record all these episodes and mucked up all the budgets and the schedules for months to come.
Well, we're going to calm you down now with
please,
listening to George Shearing
Lovely.
and the Continental. Well, here we are, wandering through the life of Bud Tingwell.
What about that?
Keep talking, babe.
George Shearing.
I know there's only something.
And the Continental, of course. I scratched Mum's lino, the new lino in the back in the house, after Dad won a prize in the lottery, and he put a bit of new kitchen for Mum. But I used to watch all the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movies and come home and try to do those dance steps all over the kitchen floor on the new lino. But, the Continental was beautifully danced by Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, going back to Hollywood. I came back from Hollywood.
Yes.
I remember, I hope you wouldn't mind, a wonderful actor, Richard Widmark, was talking to me just before I came home. He said, if you're still thinking about that 7-year contract, he said, be very careful of your 7th year. I said, why? He said, well, they give you terrible stuff to do in your 7th year, so you're not worth a bumper to anybody else if you don't re-sign at the end. Oh, thanks, sir. Thanks, Mr. Widmark. Yes. And I thought, a lot of Americans just say, don't get too excited about being offered a 7-year contract. They offer anybody a contract if they've paid their fare over, because they've got to pay your fare over and back, as they did with me and Chips, because they can sack you every 6 months if they want to. So,
you made the right decision not to sign.
I don't know. I mean, I've had probably more fun than I could have had over there. I don't know. It's the lovely thing about my life. I have no idea what would have happened if I'd gone that way or not that way, you know.
Oh.
But Chips and I made King of the Coral Sea when we got back. It gave Rod Taylor a start as a film actor. I had a bit to do with the story, etc. So that I was paid by. When Chip said, "We better pay you for all this," I said, "How much do you want?" I said, "Oh, well, how much is the airfare up to Thursday Island, where was so much?" He said, "Oh, and what about full board? What's that up there?" He said, "About 7 guineas a week." And I said, "Well, you can pay all Audrey's expenses, and she comes with me." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "You can have back £5 a week." I'd beaten him up £5 a week on the wages. I said, "You can have £5 a week back." So it was a wonderful deal we did. And Audrey and I had a ball for 9 weeks or something, whatever it was, including 2 weeks on Green Island where we did the underwater scenes.
Oh, really?
And Audrey, it was sort of our honeymoon. It was about 2 years after we got married. So we had a delayed honeymoon.
Very glamorous honeymoon.
It was lovely.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. We are slowly running out of time for this particular episode. Would you be kind, caring, willing to come back and
sure.
do another one?
Yeah, I warned you. I'm hard to interview because I don't shut up.
That's exactly what we like. Well, we welcome you back as soon as we can get you.
Thank you very
Bud,
much.
thank you very much.
You.
You've been listening to Interludes with Chris Mackenzie.